What are you doing? Hey, everybody. Hey, I just want to thank the crew for leading us in worship tonight. That was awesome. Help us center our hearts around the love of Jesus and His grace. And I want you to know that tonight we're doing something a little bit different. If you haven't been here, we're finishing up our Redesign series with a question night, where you guys have the chance over the last week or so to send questions in about the Redesign series, about anything else that you're just thinking about in your relationship with Jesus and in your faith. And I just want you to know that this night is not necessarily about getting answers to all those questions. It's actually for us to see magnified the love of Jesus for each other and the love that we have for one another. And so grace is the thing that we're going to probably talk about a lot tonight, because Jesus loves you, He loves us, and we want you knowing that walking out of here. And maybe, even if you hear something tonight, that you ask a question and we kind of share something or our thoughts on it or what we see, and you might be like, oh, I disagree with that, or I don't think that's right or true. We love each other here, and we give one another grace. And so I want you to know you're free to come and talk to us one-on-one, and we want that. We invite that. We don't want you to walk out of here and say, oh, well, what they said's right because they're standing up there and, they know more than... No, we don't. We've learned just as much from you during this series as you have from us. And so we want you to know that, whatever we talk about and share, we want you to feel free to come back and ask more questions. That's what this is about. Sometimes asking a question is not about finding an answer. It's about it leading us to more questions and more things and more truth. But we really want this to lead you guys to the love and grace of Jesus. And so we have this beautiful panel up here of people who are a lot smarter than I am. And so you know all these people and love all these people, and they love you. So Jessica Breeden's here. There's a Jessica Breeden fan club here. And who's the president right now? I can't remember. You got Morgan McCloskey over here.
Yeah, Morgan.
The lovely Brandon Bossa. Okay, and he's overwhelmed. Don't make Brandon pass out before he can answer a question, right? So, and we might even just call out some students and have you stand up and answer a question too, because we know you know the answer or something. That might be fun. Corinne's probably going to be first, right? Yeah, I don't know. But Morgan's going to get us started tonight.
Yeah.
We're just going to go through some of the questions and talk about it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there were a lot of really good questions you guys typed in. Some, just beyond what we could possibly have knowledge for. And this is one of those, but we're going to start with a really big one. So this is it. It's specified for Mike, Morgan, and Brandon.
Yes.
In particular. So you can take a second, get to the next one. All 3 campus ministers are on a deserted island, and there's no more food. You've been there for 40 days and 40 nights, and you're not leaving anytime soon. Who do you eat first, and why? Of the 2 that are left, who would survive the longest? Explain the thought process.
Save you a seat right there. Oh wow! Yeah, do it. Who wants to start?
You.
Okay. Here's what I think. We took this question very, very seriously. We really feel like that none of us could kill someone like each other. We couldn't take each other out. And so we would just wait. We would just wait till the first person died, and then we would eat that person.
I honestly Brandon's gonna live. He's gonna survive.
I feel like Brandon would live the longest.
And I think I'm a goner because really, if we kill you, there's nothing to eat. There's just you're so skinny. You're so thin.
I bet we keep that.
Yeah, she wasn't in it. She was not on the dessert shot. Brandon,
I do disagree. I feel like y'all
would just have it out for me. He's scared.
I would fear Brandon.
I feel like Brandon would live the longest. I feel like I would do something stupid.
In the event though that this
So you can run the
island,
fastest.
That's true.
like we're
But
under
it is an
attack,
island. There's only so far
like
you
you
can
can
run.
run away.
It's turtle.
There are predators on the island. Quickly fall asleep at exactly 10 p.m.
So I feel like we got through that one, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's by show of hands, we'll let you guys participate. How many of you think Morgan would last the longest? Noah? How many of you think Brandon would last the longest?
Yeah, Brandon!
Okay. How about me? Anybody? Yes, I'm Lee.
I saw you guys that Jessica just whispered me. She goes, "Well, here's the thing. I think Brandon would kill."
What Brandon kill? Show of hands. No, I'm just kidding. Alright, maybe we'll move on to the series.
Okay, next question. Moving on. I love this question. It is, how do I value rest during finals week? Someone help. The exact wording from the Google form. How do I value rest during finals week? So I think you just, for some of you guys, this is kind of like your first finals week. Sort of, kind of. And even for the sophomores in the room, because, I mean, every semester has looked so non-typical, non-traditional for you guys in particular. And I just think you have to recognize and agree that rest is going to look different over the next 2 weeks for you guys. It's not going to look the way it always looks. You are not in a sprint, you are in a marathon, and that will probably be reflected in the amount of rest as well as the amount of, as well as your grades, I guess, for your exams. It's not a matter of like how much, like how successful can I be in this one class. It's how well can I do in every single class with every single bit of information I've consumed if you have cumulative finals. And so it can, I mean, I don't know if you guys are just exhausted or overwhelmed or how you're feeling, but I think one of the best things you can do above all else when it comes to prioritizing rest is really take care of your body. Like, it is a delicate thing to be human, and that means like fueling your body with good foods, like drinking water, like actual water, not just the water that's in coffee. Like, you might, these next 2 weeks, you might just need more physical rest than normal, and it is a good thing and a grace-filled thing to allow that for yourself. If you need naps and you're not a napper, it is a good thing to find that in these next... Should I avoid eye contact for the rest of this question? But seriously though, I think taking care of you, like yourself physically, and giving yourself as much room as possible to physically rest, like actually sleeping and getting outside, moving your body, not just from like your bed to your chair or to the dining hall and back, but really just taking a minute to not look at your screen. All of those things I think are really good. And then, I mean, finals week, I don't know if you have other things to add about this, because we're the closest to a finals week out of the people up here. And I think one of the things that I remember the most is like repetitive prayers and mantras through that week. And that might be the kind, like rest might be in finals week, the kind of rest that you just remember, I am not what I produce this week. I am not, how well I do on this final does not change my purpose, my value, my life. Like, all I can do is my best. So that was one of my huge ones in college. Just do your best. Just do your best. If my best is a C, well, I did my best. I could not have asked more of myself in that moment. Just do your best. I am not what I do. I am not what I do. Like, very repetitive prayers over and over and over again over your day. Is a place that you find rest more so internally than externally. But I think it's just as important as physical rest.
Yeah, I would just second everything she said, but like I also just have a couple of like practical things that I know I would fall into around this time of year. One is maybe don't spend like 3 hours calculating the exact grade you need on that final. Like maybe actually use that time just studying or resting. I know there are people out there. I know I did it. I know y'all did it. We did it. It's a thing.
It's very important.
But like, it's true. But in that same vein, I would just say be honest with yourself about what is really rest and what is procrastination. Like, sorry, we're getting kicked off the panel. I said one of the jokes tonight, I'm sorry. But like, sorry. But like now is not the time to be like, you know what, I need to go get that oil change.
Right.
Like, when's the last time the air filters in this house have been changed? Like, it's not the time for that kind of stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, like, maybe you need to clean up the apartment a little bit. I know I study better when the apartment's clean. But it's not time to get down in that drain and clean that out. Like,
The baseboards can wait.
yes, the baseboards can wait until after the holidays.
I know.
But just be honest with yourself when it comes to that. Like, take real rest, not procrastination. And I'll leave it at that.
You guys did great.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Also, we believe in you, and we're here for you. We know it can be a lot, so we believe in you.
How's your Florence Christian camp and study on the porch or the retreat room? That's
Highly
what you should
recommend.
do.
Highly recommend. It's real nice. The sunset there was like 12 out of 10 tonight. It was gorgeous. All right. Next question is, what Bible verse spoke the most to you during this series? So during the Redesign series that we've been going through, what Bible verse spoke the most to you during this series?
Hey, I'll just go. I don't know. I just hit a microphone. I'm sorry. I don't know if we really used this verse, but this was kind of one of the verses that was like the heart behind it. It's in Galatians 5:1, and it just says this: "It is for freedom that Christ set you free." And just this idea that we are free to question, to say the thing that we're thinking when someone says something, to redesign, to actually look at our faith, and we're free to look at it again and again. We're free to look at the box of Christianity that we were raised in, and we're free to look at that and evaluate it up against the way of Jesus. And we're actually free to question and doubt and do all these things and go through this process, and actually Jesus invites us into it to become more like Him. And so Galatians 5:1 would be that verse for me that, you know, it is for freedom that Christ set us free. And this journey we've gone on the last few weeks of the Redesign series, we just have this freedom to do that with God. And that's just such a beautiful thing. Because sometimes you hear something in church, or you were raised a certain way and you've always questioned it, and you never felt free to actually express that or vocalize that and talk about it with people. You're free to do that here. And so that's kind of a cool thing. So that's the verse that stood out to me.
So it's a little embarrassing because the verse that stood out to me is one that I highlighted, but every time I come, I learn something for myself when you all invite me to come. And so John 10:10, particularly the end of it, "But a thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come so that they may have life and have it in abundance." And I've been thinking a lot about that the past 2 weeks, what it looks like to live in abundance, and I've thought about that verse a lot. And just today, I was listening to a speaker, Carlos Whitaker, who said, Jesus did not die on the cross so that we can just cope. He didn't die for us to operate at 60% abundance. And so that is my mission, to live an abundant kind of life. And the gift of coming here was that reminder for me. So that's my favorite.
It's my favorite now too. Dang, all right.
I agree.
So for me during the Redesign series, I think when I spoke about rest, that was a very impactful week for me, just because I wasn't resting when I was writing that message, and so it was very, very convicting as I was writing that. But I would say one of the Bible verses actually that really spoke to me was when Mike was speaking about being real instead of being polished. And one of the passages he read from was in Matthew 23, and it's when Jesus is calling out the Pharisees. And what he says to them, he says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." And then throughout his message, the imagery in that is crazy. You're like a whitewashed tomb, beautiful on the outside, but in the inside just full of dead bones. That is vivid imagery, right? But it was such a compassionate call for me just to live more authentically. And I think that's something that God's been redesigning in my faith story, how to do that in vulnerability and authenticity, just in my everyday. with you guys they get to meet with in Bible study as a staff, and I think that's just carried through the entire series for me.
Well, mine's nothing too crazy, but I just feel like it's kept coming to mind towards the end of the semester and as we go towards the holidays. And it's just from when I talked about community, just the fact that they broke bread in their homes and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. Like, I know for some of us going home for the holidays isn't necessarily a happy thing. And for some of us maybe it is, but just, I don't know, just hopefully you can find that, whether it's here tonight when we were just eating together, or maybe you go and have a lunch with a friend as you're part of your rest for exams. But I just hope that we can all find that at some point in the season, and remember that that's what God's called us to, and that's who we can be as like a body of believers, and really as the church is just people who gather together in homes and eat together and celebrate together. And I just hope that we do that this holiday season.
Cool. Want to do the next one? Let me read you.
Read it to me.
Okay. Next question is, I love this too. How do you love someone that drives you crazy?
Tell me, how do you love me? So I think that is way harder the closer, and that's when people drive you crazy. The closer you get. But something that I have been learning and working through, I think for years, I thought that this is going to tie into the next one. Go ahead, read them both together. Yeah.
I want
to.
to.
Thank you.
All right. So first one is, how do you love someone that drives you crazy? And the next one is, how do you draw boundaries in relationships, and how do you do it?
And so, boundaries are loving. And when you're in a relationship with someone who drives you crazy, a lot of things can be going on, but something that I have found is that you've assigned them power over your life that's not meant to be there, okay? We've talked about this before, like in marriage, that's a two-person relationship. So if you've got other people speaking into that, there's a problem there if they have stepped over a boundary and put a third person into that, for instance. If we're talking about relational boundaries, then you work to teach people what your boundaries are, and you can do that in a loving way. I have said, my word for this year was clarity. I'm not ashamed to tell you, one of those weirdos that was like, oh, I have a word for the year, but this, I have driven this home to myself over and over again, that clarity is kind. It is kind to the person you're speaking to, and it's kind to yourself, okay? Expectations that you place on people, or people place on you that aren't communicated, are nothing. They are no good. And boundaries and expectations are biblical, okay? Let me read, I just saw this week, and it's so cool. It's in Mark 5, when they think that the little girl is dead, and they go and they get Jesus, and so he says, don't be afraid, only believe. He didn't let anyone accompany him except Peter, James, and John, James's brother. They come to the house, they see a commotion, people are weeping and wailing loudly. You think they were aggravating at that point? And because he was like trying to get to her, and he says, why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead but asleep. So then they turn from weeping and laughing to from weeping and crying to laughing at him. And so what does he do? He puts them all outside. Boom. Boundaries are biblical. The people that were not a part of the solution, were not pouring in a healthy way, he put them outside. And then he went in and he told her to get up. Jesus would go away by himself. Okay, so if someone is driving you crazy, perhaps distance is an okay thing to do. But also, I think it's important that we remember that everyone looks through different eyes, different lenses, okay? And so they're coming from a different place. And I'm learning to love some people that are coming from a very different place than I am. 44 years old and still trying to figure it out. People very, very close to me. And so something that I have learned recently with a lot of work is to be curious. Like, why? Why do you think that way? Why did you say that to me? Okay. The why. Because everyone is the way they are for a reason, myself included. Okay? And so I think that the work isn't to fix them. It's to fix the way we see them. And it's to change our thought about them, and our story about them. And that sounds trite, and I don't mean it that way, but I've been working to tell myself a better story about people that I'm called to love, that are going to come up in direct opposition to me, to my faith, to just my well-being. And so if that's a relationship, like family, that's one thing, okay? You can work at that. You can teach people your boundaries. You'll know how you've set them and you're holding on to them, because that's important. If you set them, you need to hold on to them, but you don't do it in a vacuum. You have to have support, okay, and people, and talk that through with trusted folks. But do you know how you've done it and you're holding fast? People are going to get upset. There's very few times in your life when you set a boundary and people say thank you, and then never try to step over again. They'll put their toe on it and they'll keep coming, and you revisit it, but you do it in love. Boundaries are biblical, the way to handle them are biblical, and I'm just figuring it out. And part of the way that I know I'm doing it right is the emotion that it stirs up in people. And so that's why I say you need to have people come alongside you, pray for you. Now that is in just a family relationship. If we're talking about boundaries, physical boundaries in a dating relationship, we don't mess around with that very long before we just say, you know what, maybe this just isn't working. that's a different timeline, okay? And for that, I'm sure some other folks can chime in. I will say a couple things that I feel pretty strongly about when it comes to this. Actually, no, go first. You all jump in, and then I'll come back around if no one says it. How about that? Everybody be quiet.
We would sure like for you to start.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
I'll say something.
Okay, go ahead.
As the only one that is unmarried on the staff, I feel like dating relationships and boundaries I should probably speak to. So I think that you guys know, like, the dating world currently, whether you're in a relationship or looking for a single woman, that doesn't matter. It's just chaotic right now for everyone all together. And I think if you are striving to establish really healthy, spiritually healthy, physical boundaries in a relationship or revolving around intimacy, I think you have to understand the why. You cannot just say the what, but this is what it is. You have to know why. And so if you are like saving sex for the covenant of marriage, for example, if you do not know why, it's not going to go well. Like, your goal in that, the why, is not abstinence, it's not virginity, it's not, your goal is purity. And that completely changes what you say yes to and what you say no to in a dating relationship. And it's really hard to speak to this to a room where just tons of different perspectives and just ideas about this as well. I think it's best done like on a one-on-one level. But I will say too, if you're striving to establish physical boundaries and you leave it up to the two of you guys just to figure it out, it's probably not gonna go well. Like, you probably need some really wise voices in on that you trust and that are gonna be looking out for not just gonna be like a woo girl for you, or like a really like, yes, you go, you get it, you seriously, you get it, but like actually gonna be someone has your best interest in mind and who's thinking about your spiritual health, your mental health, your emotional health, and is on that same vision. Not only do you have to know about it, I'd also say you have to be really specific. It's not just like, well, we'll just kind of figure the rest of that out, because I think we get a little bit lost in the gray area. And I like what Jessica says, like, we don't play around with that. Like, we just don't. I think you have to be uncomfortably specific with the person that you're dating. Like, say all of the uncomfortable words in that. And if you are struggling to name those and what they should be or shouldn't be, I'll just say I would love to talk to you about that one-on-one, because I think that's important. I really think that's important, and it doesn't make me uncomfortable to talk about that kind of stuff. And then the last thing before you chime in with all your wisdom here is that the two of you in a relationship have to be on the same page. If you're not on the same page, it's going to end very difficultly. with either pressure or guilt or shame. And no matter what your dating history has looked like, no matter what your sexual history has looked like, God has never once intended for you to touch shame in this world. And that is not from him, that's never from him. Like, he is a God, like Mike said at the very beginning, who just gives grace upon grace upon grace, no matter what. But he does have a best way for you, and that's what we want you guys to live into, just to protect you and keep you safe. So, and you.
And me.
Or Brandon or Mike.
I literally had communication and wise counsel. So you covered it. You got it.
Great job.
The only thing I'll say is this: I think even like culturally and in your upbringing, we kind of need to redefine what like the word like intimacy refers to. I think a lot of times when we think of intimacy, we think of physical relationship, we think of sex, we think of all these different things. This is intimacy, when really it has nothing to do with that. You can be have a relationship of intimacy that is a friendship. You can go, I mean, it's really two souls, actually talking with one another or spending time with one another. These are the things that a relationship should be about. And if you want real intimacy, it could be based in a conversation on a walk. And a lot of times when we think about relationships, we think physical quite a bit, because that is a major thing that we talk about all the time and we think about a lot. And yeah, that is part of how we were created. We were created by God with a desire to be physically intimate with another person. Like, that's part of who we are and how we were made. But when you think about intimacy, think about it in a way that's a conversation. It's a deepening of relationship. It is not just this physical act that you think draws you closer together. There are far more things that make you much more intimate than physical. And so I think sometimes it helps to kind of redefine that word. If our relationship's going to go really, really deep, we've got to do this or do that. Well, no, actually. If you want your relationship to go deep, have a conversation. Guys, this is why you shouldn't take a girl to a movie on the first date. Because you're scared to talk to her? No. Take her somewhere where you can look her in the face and talk to her. I called some of you out. Yeah. Some of you guys are dating someone that did that. Sorry. You take them to a place where you can take a walk and talk and get to know each other. That is much more intimacy than, the physical. So I would just say that.
Having the boundaries talk alone.
Sure.
You want to take your relationship deeper. To do that, to be on the same page, boundaries communicate love.
Yeah.
And when they're done well, and when they're respected between two people, like, that's really something. The one other thing that I would just say that speaks just kind of to the most simple level of the question, like how to do this well, I'll just say this: boundaries are not made in the moment. Okay, so if you're thinking, we're gonna need to talk about that, but like, she makes a move, he makes a move, then no. Boundaries are not made in the moment. At least not the ones we feel really good about.
Yep. I'll just close that with this verse, and it goes well to the boundaries of any kind, in any type of relationship, but also loving people that drive you crazy. In Hebrews 12:14, it says, "Make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." And just making every effort to live at peace means doing the hard thing and having an uncomfortable boundary conversation, no matter the relationship that this involves. And because it is uncomfortable to lay out, hey, this is how you can love me best, and this is how I can love you best in any type of relationship. But making every effort means doing the thing. So, the next question, and this is a beautiful translation for one of the books that's sitting up here, is: can the staff each give 3 good book recommendations? Jessica, you can go first.
No, I'm not.
She took one on one.
No.
All right, Mike, you start.
Okay. Hey, just real quick, a couple books that I would recommend to you. One of them is maybe my favorite book in all the world. This is going to sound kind of dumb and weird, but I'm actually going to recommend this. There's a bunch of them back there. You can take one tonight. This is called the Jesus Storybook Bible. Yes. If you want to understand the Bible from cover to cover, you take this and you read it. Because I know it's a kid's Bible. I know that looks weird if you're sitting in the library or in like a place and you're opening up, like you bust this out, in church. Like, wait, which? There's pictures and stuff. It's beautiful. But the way this is written, like, if you read this cover to cover, it will help you understand the story of the Bible. And sometimes we're called, Jesus called us to have faith like children. What better way? So that's one of them.
I'd like to echo that. Excellent.
Yeah. Another book, What If Jesus Was Serious? We have those back there too. This is a great book that goes through the Sermon on the Mount. Very easy to read and pretty awesome.
We have some of those too, if you want.
And the only other one I'll say is sometimes it's kind of cool to get perspectives on faith, family, friendships, ego, just a bunch of different things from a perspective that maybe is not necessarily like a Christian author or like the Christian author that you would read or people would teach from. This is a book called like Streams in the Ocean by a guy named Jedediah Jenkins. And he's an amazing guy and just an incredible person and an incredible writer. And he has thoughts in here that I have never thought about in my life because he comes from a different perspective. And I love it. It's a great book. If you want to take it off this thing right now, you can take it. And you would just have to put up with my stupid notes that I wrote in it. So those are my 3 books. It's true.
That's all you can say.
But it's a lot like, you guys don't remember this show, but it's a lot like Reading Rainbow. Reading Rainbow is awesome, and the kid would get up there and like, I want to tell you about this book, but I'm not going to tell you the ending. You'll have to go to your local library and check it out.
Just do it.
Just do it. Go.
Just do it.
Good work.
It's called Tease.
Okay.
Oh.
So my first book is Falling Free by Shannon Martin. And if you can get past the fact that it's written by a middle-aged mom, I really highly recommend this book because
you're their hero. You're not quite a
you want to
middle-aged
be like a
mom.
middle-aged mom.
Jessica, can you write a book? Read it, Jessica.
Just read this one. This is. Now, let me tell you why I like Shannon Martin. She sort of took my life and shook it up a little bit. So in a couple years, if you find yourselves with the car that you wanted in the driveway and the job you thought you wanted, and you're making enough money to pay the bills, but you're feeling unfulfilled and you have lost some of the fire that you felt here sitting at CCBT, then maybe call me and ask me what the name of this book was again. The chapter number 2, Redefine Family, wrecked my family in the best way. The problem with the world is that we draw the circle of our family too small. Boom. This changed everything for us in just what we thought we wanted and what God really wanted for us. And I don't always agree with Shannon Martin, and I would suggest that you read people that you don't always agree with as well, because you know what it does? It tells you what you believe. So, I mean, faith-wise, I think we're on the same page. But, so that's my first one. Number 2, Remember God, Annie Downs, my girl Annie Downs. Actually, I can recommend anything by Annie Downs, but she's not afraid to just say what we're all thinking and hope that her publisher, her Christian publisher, will still put it on the shelf. She said, I know God is loving. I know He is good. I believe He is big and powerful. But sometimes I wonder if He is really kind. Really, deeply, always kind. I love Annie Downs. So there's my second one. Ready?
Together.
This is more organized. My third pick, her first. There we go. Okay, take it away, Lynn.
This book, I would recommend every single person in this room read it.
Yes.
Every single person. It's called Sex, Jesus, and Conversations the Church Forgot. And it is a very important book that every college student should read. A lot of what we talked about, boundaries, was in here. She writes so vulnerably and transparently about everything the church should have and would have done differently. And she just is Prince Mo Isom. If you want a copy, I will buy you a copy. That is like how passionately I feel about this.
I'll buy half, you buy half.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It is good, and I think it will rewrite some things for you as you navigate dating, singleness, all of the things, and just, yeah, all of it.
I wish I had had this book would have saved me some heartache.
I almost said that exact same thing about it, seriously.
Seriously.
Yeah,
And
it's
would have
good.
made my marriage better sooner.
I would
Or
say,
friendship, any relationship, just buy the book. Let us buy the book.
and if you're in a dating relationships, like you should read this with your partner. Seriously, like this is so good. We've had that before with alumni that were dating and
Kayla
are
text.
now married. Wow. Yeah, Brandon and Brittany, look out. Look where they are now.
It's true.
It's on Amazon.
Hey, really quickly, my other book that I would recommend to every single person in this room is a book called Love Does by Bob Goff. It is a book that taught me to think about myself a whole lot less and others a whole lot more. It's a book that really taught me what it looks like to love well. And I think there are some in the office of that one too. Love Does is so good. We did it for a Bible study for a whole year here at CHRBT a couple of years ago. It is real good. And then I could give a million other ones, but I feel the most passionately about those two. Seriously, you go.
No, but really, I do. Going back to the other book, I do highly recommend it. Like that and Ben Stewart's Single Dating, Engaged, Married are the two books that we read through, Brittany and I, as we were walking through those different steps. So highly recommend. But I'm also going to cheat for my actual free. I'm not going to give you books. I'm going to give you podcasts. So if you haven't been in one of our Bible studies, if you have, you know where this is going. The
It's
Baseball
like
podcast.
listening to a book.
Yeah, check it out. So check it. See, we got some fans already. Check it out. It's just a great resource to help you walk through, especially the Old Testament, and it'll give you a whole new light on it. I know personally, it's changed the way that I realize things, so I highly encourage it. The next one is the Bible for Normal People. If you haven't read that one, that's a good one too. It's just a great way to help you also understand the scriptures really, really well. The last one, I will be honest, this is a little bit more for my guys. But it's called Space by Harbor Ministries. It's just a really cool podcast. They're very, very short, but it just kind of walks through probably a story and then usually a scripture and just kind of helps you meditate on that for a little while. Highly recommend if you're looking for something just to take a break and to have a little bit of a rest in the scriptures.
Cool. I know that was a hard question for some of you guys that cannot possibly think about reading a thing that's not already on your to-do list. But those would be great things to write down and maybe look at over break or re-ask the question in a little bit. All right, real quick, Mike, would you talk about just starting a conversation about mental health and it being a good thing to ask for help and express when you're not okay?
Yeah, so that was one of the questions, and I think this is one of the things that we've talked a little bit about with the whole being vulnerable and real over being polished. We don't fake it here, and you don't have to. And when it comes to your mental health and how you're feeling, and if things are going on in your life, I think the greatest thing you can do is go and talk to somebody about that. And I think it's needed that you would actually express that to someone and sit in a room with someone and talk with them over coffee or whatever. But I think one of the hardest parts of that is actually admitting that we're not okay. And, a couple months ago, a lot of our staff, including myself, were running at a pace that we could not sustain. And I was not okay. And things were not okay. And, if you guys were here, one of the times when I spoke, I sat on that porch and had a full panic attack and just could not move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think of the next step I needed to take to walk to my car and drive home. And I was just completely overwhelmed. I was completely done. And I just wanted to leave and not come back. And one of the things that happened in that time period was we had a staff meeting soon after that. And we just went through staff meeting and I was still feeling the same way and the weight of all that. And this is what I want to tell you. It's not just that you would go to someone and talk to them about it and start to walk through it with a person. And the intention is not for them to fix that. It's for them to walk alongside you and love you well and care for you and just be there. But I also want to encourage you guys, because a lot of you guys have a lot of deep friendships and deep relationships. If you have a relationship with someone and you can tell that they're not okay, talk to them. Ask them. Take the awkward step of shutting the door and walking into the room and saying, "Are you all right? Is everything okay?" And actually, the day after that staff meeting, Brandon came into the office and he shut that door and he said, "It doesn't seem like you're okay. Something wrong." man, I thought I was hiding. I thought I was doing good, putting on the smile and laughing and trying to figure it all out. But Brandon noticed that, and other people noticed it too. And he walked in and said something. And I think that's one of the things that is so important. He started that conversation for me because he could tell that something was off. And what if he was wrong? Who cares? What if he was wrong? What if I was fine? And I said, hey, I'm fine. Thanks, man. And he just moves along and skips out of the office and says, okay, great. But we sat there for a long time, and I got to share with him things that I don't know if I've shared with any other human. But he was there for me. And so I want to encourage you in that you can ask people that you're close to. And if you are struggling, you can go in and say, hey, I'm not okay right now. There's not an expectation that because you walk in this room and you're a follower of Jesus, that you have your crap together. Okay, that is not an expectation of us. And so I think that's one of the things that you've got to understand. And so, that's something that we want you to know that. And so I don't know if anybody else has anything else to say about that, but I think it's a really great question that we should go and talk to someone, but it's also, you see one another. And sometimes you can tell, like, okay, something's off. Like, I need to talk to you. And so it's okay to do that.
Yeah. Pay attention to people. Yeah. Yep. And I think, like, just if you are struggling, like if you are not okay in this moment, or if you haven't been for a while, I just want you to know that there has never been a time throughout all of history that modern medicine is more equipped to handle it. I mean, never throughout all of history, and that alone tells me that there's hope. And a lot of friendships and relationships that I've seen come through really dark times, there is so much hope. But it's not just a good thing to ask for help, it's a necessary thing just to carry you through together. So important. I'm glad whoever asked that question that came up. We're going to skip around just a little bit. I want to go to this one, and I'm going to have Brandon start us off. So it says, church hurts. What should we do if we've been hurt by the church, but we know we're supposed to go to church? And there's a part 2 to that question. It says also, what if we don't have time once we graduate college and life gets busy?
And I'm really just going to start this because I feel like some of the people up here might have some really great ideas and thoughts about this. But when I hear that question, I see somebody who wants a relationship with Jesus. Like, they really want that at their core. But the church, a specific church, a group of people, or even just the church as a whole, maybe something they think or they believe has really hurt you. And I'm sorry for that. Just to start off with that, I am so sorry for that. But you also, I see in that question, realize the need for a church. But I think sometimes it starts with rethinking what church looks like. That church at its core is a community. And that it may not look like for a little while walking into a church building. That church can happen in a home. That church can happen just via community. I mean, house church is a real thing. And that may be a place for you to start. And I would also just say, like with the second part of the question, if like it's busyness, same thing stands. Like maybe it's a Bible study that you do with just some people you really, really trust. And I get that busyness is a thing, but I think also priorities is a thing. And being honest about where your time is going and where it can be best spent. And where that falls on that priority list. So, someone please pick up for me.
You said it really well. I don't know. You did a great job. I think when it comes to making time for it, whether it's now or later, like life's always busy. There's always another thing, and you make time for what matters. It doesn't matter if it's protecting time for your spiritual life to grow and thrive in a Bible study or church on Sundays, or going to the gym and moving your body. You make time for what matters to you the most. And so when it comes to that, it's just going in without having a plan to grow and making that a priority in your life, like Brandon said. And I think another thing about that and making time for it is accountability and having community matters so much. So I don't know if any of you guys in the room have been in a season of church hopping before and like looking for a church home while you were in college or not, but it's so hard because you just show up, you sneak in the back row, and then you sneak out. Nobody knows if you're there, nobody knows if you're not. And so, you know what? If you show up the next week or not, it doesn't really matter. No one's going to say, hey, where was so-and-so? They weren't here this week. That's a really cool thing about this type of community. But accountability and jumping in, even if it's uncomfortable or awkward, are not safe for introverts right off the beginning. Just jump in immediately. Don't wait till, oh, I'm just gonna get settled for 6 months, and then a year, and then 2 years, and then I'm still not, I haven't even looked yet. Like, don't waste time, make it a priority from the very beginning. And I'll also just add on if you've been hurt by the church, for those of you that love the church and have always loved the church and have a great relationship with the church, I'll just ask this, like, are you willing to come alongside in gentleness those that have been hurt? And maybe that looks like redefining what a Sunday looks for you for a little while, so that you can have church with your friend that doesn't feel safe in a church building. Because it is true that the gospel is good for everyone, but for a lot of people, the church is not. And that's just a level of gentleness and compassion that I think is a weird tension that we're called to, but it's also something that we're called just to dwell in there, of loving people well and bringing people into the table. Once, twice, 23 times? All right. This next question is, and I love this, it says, how do you stay encouraged and faithful when life gets really hard? How do you stay encouraged and faithful when life gets really hard? You want to start?
Well, she's prompted me with this because as soon as this question was asked in the office earlier today, I just said, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And we all laughed a little bit, but that was because it hit home a little bit.
Yeah.
That there are sometimes going to be seasons in your life where you don't feel encouraged, where you don't feel those ways that you really wish you did. And that is okay. We all go through those seasons. But could you read the question one more time?
Yeah, how do you stay encouraged and faithful when life gets really hard?
And I think the thing that you need and the things that get you to those times is the people around you, is the community. I mean, this even goes back to the last step, to the last question of, like, it is the people around you that will get you through those times. And it is reliance on them and your relationship with Jesus that will help you walk through the times when you feel like there is nothing going right. And if you don't have those people in your life who are encouraging you, that might be part of the problem. And maybe where to start is finding a community of people that will encourage you, that will love you so well, that will help you walk through those seasons and hopefully walk out of them, and that they'll do that with you.
Yeah. You look like you're going to say something.
You go ahead. You guys
Yeah,
go
sister.
No, you, sister. Ladies first.
Okay, all right.
Wisdom,
Bring it together.
beauty.
No. Someone, I love what someone said about, it's not so much that I have a strong faith, I have a really good memory. And I like that, because sometimes that sits a little better with a broken heart. Like remembering what God has done. And back to what you were saying about, would you be willing to come alongside, or would your friends? Sometimes I think we have to believe for someone. Say, like, if you're not there yet, okay, but I'm going to believe this promise for you. I'm going to pray this promise for you. And on the way here tonight, I texted someone that I love dearly. There's a song, I cannot remember the name of it, but they say, my faith will surely falter, but I will build an altar and stack it stone by stone. Every Ebenezer is a point where I've never been alone. Reminds me I've never been alone. Okay, if we remember, then that's going to build our faith. So write it down, journal. When you see God move, write it down. We are prone to forgetfulness.
The other thing I would add to that is, Trent, I think there's a picture that can go up on the screen. It just starts with the word grace. And I don't know if it's going to show up, but okay. So I read this earlier in the week, and I think this is one of the things that keeps me going when something gets really hard, to be encouraged and faithful. It just says, grace and truth is the invitation to be seen, and in that seeing to receive the gift of presence not withheld. And that's something that keeps me going, I think, to take the next steps, because allowing people to see all of me, see everything, see the good and the bad, to see that God sees everything about my life and your life, and He does not withhold His presence from us. He does not take His presence away from us because of our sin. He actually presses into that and rescues us. His presence, He comes here we're starting to celebrate that in this Christmas season of Jesus coming to earth in the flesh. He comes as human and to be with us. And then when he leaves, he sends the Holy Spirit to live within us. God does not withhold his presence from us because of what we're going through or what's going on in our lives. And that encourages me to be faithful, to continue following, even when it doesn't make sense, even when I can't see a way, even when life just seems like it's falling apart. I want to keep following someone who loves me like that. That his presence would not be withheld. And the same thing here. There's not really anything that you could walk up and say, I'm questioning this, or I'm struggling with this, or this is going on in my life, that we would say, ooh, you know what, Jack, it's just too much. Like, I just, bye, and we walk alongside each other. And so our presence not withheld is grace. And God's presence not withheld keeps me going. And I just thought I would share that with you when this question came up, because I just think it's such a cool thing to think about, that I can remain faithful and keep going because God does not walk away from me. And so that's what I would say.
That good. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we're gonna. This is our last big one. Then we're gonna end with a fun one. You don't know where I'm going, do you?
I know.
Could
I'm
be a-
very anxious.
I've
right
skipped
now.
all
So
around.
scared.
There's a lot of questions we're not going to get to tonight, but that's because we're long-winded. I'm so sorry. Okay, how do you share your faith without pushing your faith? Is the question. Mike, you want to start?
I'm going to answer this one so fast we get another one.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
This is the only answer. Thank you. You distracted me. It's supposed to be quick.
You already wasted 15 seconds.
Yeah, I know. It was Kaylee's fault. All right. Relationship. That is how. I think if we could sum it up in one word, relationship. It is not, you will never be seen as pushy or pushing this on someone when they know you love them, when you're in a relationship with them. And sometimes we lack patience in this. We want everything to get neatly wrapped up by the end of a 30-minute show or a 45-minute show. I love shows that leave me on a cliffhanger, so I got to watch the next one again. That's what's led to binge watching TV shows, right? But here's the thing. Relationship is what eliminates the idea of pushing this on someone. I don't have any right to speak into someone's life that I don't know. And so if I know them, I can speak into their life, and they may hear me, even if it's the same thing I could say the same thing to a stranger, and they wouldn't accept that. I think relationship is the key. And so this means we need to build relationships with people that don't believe what we believe, right? Like that don't think like we think, that have a different perspective than we have, because as we love them, eventually they'll let us speak into their life. And so that's a pretty cool thing. Was that quick enough?
That's beautiful.
Okay.
Anything to add? Anything to add? All right, I do have to add. Just saying, just speak from an overflow of what you love. And I think the biggest thing you can do here is just be connected and being captivated in your relationship with Jesus. And as he's teaching things to you, and as he's growing you, just don't hide that from your friends. Just like you would share your other passions with your friends. I think we have this huge fear that sits on so many of us that, we can't talk about our faith because it's going to suddenly seem pushy. Well, no, your friends, even if they believe differently than you, they probably care what you think and why. And even if it's something that sounds a little crazy to them, hey, this crazy thing that we did in Bible study this week that I can't stop thinking about, or this thing that the speaker said on Thursday night at the campus ministry I go to, just share it with them. I was at a fall retreat a couple years ago, and everyone in the small group afterward disclosed that they had hid the fact that they were on a fall retreat from all of their friends and roommates. They just were I'm on a leadership thing this weekend, actually. I'm just going away for the weekend. Just speak from what you love. Share your passions with your friends, which means being captivated by Jesus himself. Is there a question that you really want to ask on here?
How about you guys? Any?
I have a favorite, but if there's one that you really want to...
Some of these we'll post like little videos of us answering them, and you can check it out on Instagram. But I don't know, is there another question that you look at and say, hey, this is one I want to?
This is my favorite question that anyone like asks in the thing, and it's what truth do you struggle to believe about God? What truth do you struggle to believe about God? And if you have, I don't know, if anyone up here wants to answer that one, I really love that one. Ooh, I'll start.
Okay.
You love it.
There's when I was talking about repetitive prayers and statements earlier, there's one that if you've been around for any length of time, you've heard me say lots of times in prayer and in conversation, and it's something I tell myself often, which is God is good to me, and God is good at being God. I feel like some of the people in here could like mouth the last one. God is good. God is good to me, and God is good at being God. And it's the last one for me. That's why I repeat it to myself all the time. It's not an exclamation of like, this is so obvious and clear to me. It's because in my just humanity, I question that one. Like, okay, but if you're good at being God, then why did you do it this way? Like, why didn't you do it this way? Like, why did you choose this instead of this? And just, it's a good thing to ask questions and to wrestle. But that's the one that I struggle to believe, which is why I remind myself of his faithfulness in that prayer and just repeating that over me often throughout the week.
So I'm going to just piggyback that and say something that we talked about today when we met about the questions, which was that when you do that, like when you need to repeat that to yourself, to remember who God is, not the parts of what he does that we don't understand with our human capacity, with our human brains. You saying that made me think about that, and I felt like that was important to share because it propels me forward sometimes when I just don't understand.
I would say, I think this is true. Sometimes we think something's true. We're not sure, but I really do think this is true. The promise of God that we most align our life with and we get the most out of, and we like encourage us the most and keeps us going the most, is maybe the one that we doubt the most as well. And I found that to be true in my life. And the one that I love the most is that God's promise, that over and over again, his promise to be with me. I will be with you. Over and over again, he promises that in the scripture. And it is the one I doubt and struggle with and cry out to God at times and say it's not true. That's the one I struggle with the most, but it's also the one that I most need and align my life with. But it's also the one that I wake up sometimes and I'm like, nah, that ain't true. You're not with me. Look at what's going on. And so I think that's the one for me. Yes.
I can't leave and sleep tonight if I don't get this right. For whoever wrote that question about faith, and for whoever in the room that it resonated with, like, is God good? Is God kind? This song preaches a sermon. It was the one that I couldn't think of the name. It's Just As Good. Chris Renzema, Just As Good. Listen to it. Listen to it when you're anxious during finals. Listen to it when you wonder, is he good? But it just, yeah, that's my last show and tell. Sorry.
Yay.
Not kidding.
Everyone be quiet.
Wow.
I think Jesus wants us to listen to it right now. No, I'm kidding.
Jesus hit that button. He was funny.
All right. To close out the panel questions, would everyone please share a legitimate question from you guys, your favorite Christmas movie?
Die Hard.
It's not Christmas Vacation, it's the wrong answer.
Don't you want to know? Don't you want to know instead of guessing?
I think you said everyone.
Yeah, Mike.
My favorite Christmas movie is
Die Hard.
I thought it was really fun.
White Christmas.
Oh, yeah!
D. Morgan Bobrovsky.
Morgan Bobrovsky.
I guess Elf is okay. Yeah.
No, she does not like any Christmas movies.
Okay, look.
D.
This is how I feel. I like Elf, I like Grinch, but I think I'd be okay. And in full Christmas spirit if I didn't watch a single Christmas movie this season.
Take a call.
Alright, Brandon.
D. Brandon Bossa.
It's a weird one, but watch it if you haven't seen it. It's called Jack Frost. It's an oldie. It's really weird. The dad turns it into a snowman, but it's funny. Watch it. It's a weird.
Okay.
Don't sleep on the claymation. That's all I'm saying.
It's not claymation. Just look it up. Jack Frost is on HBO Max. It's got Michael Keaton in it.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's go. But I would say this.
Close it out. And the kids will do it.
I know you guys have. I was hearing a lot of Christmas Vacation, but